Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today to learn about aligning the priorities of cyber risk and service delivery for security and IT teams. In short, I would say good things happen when IT and security teams work together. I'm Lokesh Agarwal. I'm founder and CEO of Apexa IQ. I will be your moderator for this webinar today. Quick housekeeping, if you do have any questions during this webinar, please use the chat function and we will answer your questions at the end. For those who are not familiar with Apexa IQ, I'll give a quick introduction. We are a SaaS-based asset assurance platform that provides visibility to your entire technology landscape, discovers all your security gaps, and help prioritize your remediation based upon criticality. We provide you with one risk rating score, hence Apexa IQ, that quantifies your entire technology landscape and tell you what needs remediation now and what can wait. Currently, we are active, operated in 3 different continents, North America, Asia, and Europe. Primarily, we are working with banks, hospitals, and insurance companies, and managed service providers. So Apexa IQ is built on 4 essential pillars: inventory, security, productivity, and finance. By keeping these main goals in mind, we strive to bring IT, security, business, and finance teams together to collaborate with each other. Today's topic is centered around very much the same, something that I have witnessed firsthand at our very close company, COCC, where IT and security teams working hand in hand on their transformation journey. I'm privileged to have 2 of these pioneers with me today. Allow me to introduce Jamie, Perry, and Steve Reis, a living example of how IT and security form an extremely valuable relationship. A little short note about Jamie. Jamie is a Senior Vice President and CSO at COCC, leading their cutting-edge infrastructure and cybersecurity operations. In addition, she oversees COCC's information technology governance, risk and compliance strategy, business continuity, disaster recovery, and physical security efforts. Working closely with their technology teams, she has been an integral part of the success of COCC's technology, security, resiliency, and product enablement. Jamie, thank you very much for joining us today. I appreciate you being on the panel. And Steve is a Senior Vice President and CTO of COCC. He plays a critical role in leading the technology and infrastructure initiatives at COCC. His technical ability, coupled with his leadership and commitment to client services, and made him an integral player at COCC. COCC has continually demonstrated that he can and will seek out the best technical solutions for COCC while keeping services level top notch. We've been working together since October of 2021, and the relationship has been outstanding. Thank you both for being here today to share your experience with the audience. So thank you very much, you guys.
Thanks for having us, Lokesh.
First question I'm going to ask to both of you. You guys can pick or toss whoever wants to answer first. Just a generic question. Why did you get into technology, and especially in a banking industry? Jamie, you want to start?
Well, at the time, technology was a much higher paying job, so it was a no-brainer. But I was always very interested in networking, security, things like that. So I got my start working with a defense contractor, doing just general IT work. But then once I got the opportunity to transition into the cybersecurity, that's really where I fell in love. And I worked for a pretty large healthcare company at the time that had over 3,000 locations. So, it was a lot of information, a lot of fun on defending things. I'm sure as everyone knows, the healthcare industry as well as the financial services industry are some of the most targeted. So it really was quite fun to see, all the different attacks that were coming in. How do we prevent them? And really that just became my passion over time, is how do we prevent the bad actors from compromising information, compromising data. So it's a little bit about why I got into technology.
Steve?
Yeah, so I got into technology very young. So my family was big into technology. My father was a programmer. Sort of got me into the trade, and I started in high school and worked my way through. I really decided to focus on technology versus the security side. Um, I just enjoy the pieces that come together on the overall technology side. The security side is great, but I really think that a lot of the complexity and the technology is driven primarily on the infrastructure and the hardware side, and now with the cloud coming into play as well. So I'm just really interested in how that all comes together. So that's really my passion now is driving these business values, business outcomes with transformational technologies.
Perfect. Now, thank you very much again. And my next question I think is for Jamie. Right? I think we talked about a little bit how did you got into the cybersecurity, but is there a main reason why did you pick security versus IT side, Jamie?
Um, that's an interesting question. No, I think, the way Steve described it about, the transformational technologies and really the complexity. eh, I mean, that was cool and interesting to me, but I was more focused on how do we protect the house. Coming from a military background, I kind of have that feeling behind me of how do we protect things. And so, a lot of the attackers that we see are nation state threat actors. And coming from other countries. And so I just kind of took that military passion and just put it towards security. And so I just continued to focus on that more than the infrastructure. But, I always wanted to, I always found that while you have security and infrastructure separate, security it cannot be successful at all without the cooperation and the helpfulness of the infrastructure team building their solutions securely and properly. So, you know, in other organizations that I've worked in, it was always a very adversarial relationship between security and infrastructure. So, I feel very fortunate today to be able to work with Steve and have a much more collaborative relationship. It definitely helps to further the security program of any organization to have that buy-in from your CTO, from your CIO, to be able to further your own agenda and protect the organization. Infrastructure, they're just going to continue doing what they do, and without that willingness to participate in a security program, they're just going to go. So
Yeah, no, I've been in my life, right? I've seen this happening, being on the IT side a lot. Security first by mind, but you have to have that. So, Steve, I'm going to ask you the same questions. Why IT and not security? I know you're IT, you're security at heart first, but it's
Yeah, I think they're so intertwined that it's difficult to differentiate between the two paths at this point. You really, as Jamie said, you can't have one without the other. And as much as we, joke across the aisle a little bit here or there, it's one team, and we're really focused on driving the solution that is secure, that is performant, that is scalable, and that really gives us the end of the day the win. And there's no win without it being secure. You could have the fastest application on earth, but if it's not secure, it's not going to do anything. You could have the most secure application on earth, and if it's not fast, if it's not user friendly, if it's not accessible, it's not going to work. So you can't have one without the other. So as much as we say, one or the other, I really think it's a big collaboration on both of our parts to get everyone in and all working together and really working towards that same goal.
I seriously hope the people who are here representing security and IT, they are listening to you, and they are literally taking that because, like I have seen in my professional career, right, where IT don't like security or security don't like IT, but that's why we thought this would be a great topic between bringing two of you together, right, so that people can literally understand how important it is to work together, right? And that comes to my next question, right? By working together, what have you seen your IT and security teams, right? You guys are collaborating, but how about your IT and security team? They accomplish that you may have thought was not possible or were unexpected. So how did you guys bring your IT teams together, and anything that you guys can, any use case you can bring in, or what do you think that you guys were able to accomplish which was not possible by not working together?
Yeah, so I certainly have one thing on the top of my mind. So when I joined COCC, we had a vulnerability management program, but we wanted to further enhance it, and so we put in some pretty strict SLAs on remediating vulnerabilities. Now, the security team all day could say remediate this, but without the participation of Steve's teams, we never could reach the strict SLAs that we did put in place. And so it was a large effort on Steve's teams where they had to take a look at how they were patching systems, ensure that they were patching them even more frequently than many of our other organizations in this industry do. But we really wanted to take a stance that we wanted to have zero vulnerabilities that were over SLAs. And, while we were doing that before, we just, like I said, we put stricter time frames in place. And that was absolutely, we as an organization could never have accomplished that without the creativeness of Steve's teams to say, how do we solve this problem? Here's the ask, and how do we solve it? And I think that just goes to speak to many people's feelings in COCC, where it's very collaborative. We obviously, whenever you have something where you put, where you say, hey, these are the SLAs that we want to meet or the things that we want to do, it's a negotiation and a discussion with the infrastructure teams. I think sometimes security teams come out and they say, this is the line and you have to meet it, no discussions, no questions asked. But I think a lot of times it's a negotiation and a discussion about what can we achieve, and what are our tolerances to different things. So it's very much a collaboration, but Steve's teams rose to the occasion. We have a fantastic vulnerability management program that honestly is only as a result of Steve's infrastructure teams. Again, like I said, security can set the bar, but they're not the ones always doing the work to meet that. So it was absolutely fantastic, and our board is very happy with the level that we've achieved in our vulnerability management program. And I know it's something that's not very easy for other organizations to achieve, whether they're small or large. The amount of vulnerabilities that come out into the environment these days is just astronomical. Every day there's new vulnerabilities just flowing out. And so, I really got to give our infrastructure team with the leadership of Steve just so many kudos for that collaboration and meeting that bar that we decided as an organization to meet. Because again, we couldn't have done it without them. And I think that's why it's so important that security individuals take a step back, realize I can't do this on my own, and I need to make a really great partnership here with all the stakeholders that are involved, whether they're application owners, whether they're hardware owners, whoever, because that's how they're going to be able to bring their program forward and meet the objectives that they need to meet. So that, at least to me, since I've joined COCC, that was a really huge win, and we continue to meet this high bar every single day to where, our regulators are extremely happy with with how quickly we remediate vulnerabilities. And just from experience and talking to other organizations, we're a cut above doing these things, and again, all a result of the cooperation and the team aspect between us both.
And I witnessed that of you guys working together and your teams working together. And I know I joked with you, Jamie, once, say, your few of your engineers know our Apexa IQ platform more than anything else. Like, you're not taking any of my guys. I was like, no, I was just kidding. So, Steve, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think
To that?
what Jamie said is true, and her team played a huge role in keeping all of the pieces moving, all the right focus on the right items, and really making sure that we moved together as a group. Executing something like what we did there it took a lot of effort on really all the teams. It really was not just on the infrastructure side. There's a lot of the things that the infrastructure folks don't like to do. So there's a lot of paperwork and there's a lot of check boxes and there's a lot of thought put into those policies and procedures and organizational documents. And those are the things that, Jamie's team really took the lead on and made sure that we were all moving together. And without that coordination and organization, it would have been extremely difficult for us to get where we were going.
Yeah, and one example that I saw when we were part of your transformation journey, one of the example that I was very shocked, surprised, and I would say pleasantly surprised is, you guys created a lot of segmentation, and security team provided that, zones that you guys created that, hey, I wanted you to work through these zones, and that's what we're going to feed into your GRC system. And Steve, your team taking that and creating all the segmentation and putting those into those buckets built by the Jamie's team. That was an amazing thing for us to see as an outsider. You guys, teams working very, very close together and accomplish one goal, which Jamie, you said your regulatory requirements, your compliance people, everybody was happy because of that. And of course, your auditors were happy because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in my world, in the security world in general, we deal with a lot of regulatory items, audit items, compliance items, checkbox items. Like Steve said, it's all the stuff that annoys people, right?
Yes.
But we've really, I think what's really important is to communicate the why. Why do we have to do something, or why is something important? Because a lot of times, security professionals, especially, they'll go to a team and they'll say, I want you to implement these 500 CIS benchmarks. Well, okay, but why are we doing this? What's the point of this? Otherwise, the team on the other end is just saying, oh, security's dumping on me all of these compliance check boxes for no reason, right? So I think it's really important on us as leaders and in security in general to communicate, why are these standards important? What are we trying to achieve by doing these certain things? Certainly the person on the other end of implementing, settings or what have you to achieve a certain security level, when they know the why, they're more invested in what they're doing. And I think that's such a great thing that Steve's teams have at COCC, is they all understand what our common goal is. And our common goal is to protect our customers. And we're all invested in that common goal. And so, because we communicate, because we talk about why we're doing things, because we have this common goal, I think makes us successful in the end.
Yeah, and I would say reinforcing this collaboration and sharing the expertise of both the teams. Of course, it leads to the one thing you said, customer experience. And I know we have been talking to a few of your customers, and oh my God, that you guys have winning, I think, the customer experience awards and the employees award, the cultural awards for the last, I don't know, 10 years in a row or something like that. It's an amazing testament to that from that perspective. So congratulations, on that front for sure. And that actually leads into the metrics, right? Because you have your own metrics, right? Steve has his own metrics that you guys either, and that's the biggest challenge that I've seen. This question came from a lot of our people who basically are CIOs or CISOs, and they wanted to know, right, how effectively and what is the best way that you guys are, your team and you guys are communicating each other, right, and your metrics that you guys have, considering how different they are from that perspective, right? So do you wanna? Because this is a good question that came from a lot of people, because this is the biggest challenge have. The IT has their own metrics. You're working together, but how do you communicate between each other to make sure the metrics are kept, and you guys are measuring it?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm talking a lot, Steve. So do you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. I can take this one. So metrics are organizational at COCC. We don't treat buckets of metrics differently. So really, when we're looking at KPIs and we're looking at dashboarding and we're looking at overall organizational health, there's not really a single bucket that we say is Jamie's, it's mine, it's more operational. It's really a holistic view of how our organization goes together, and those are the metrics that we focus on. And we really build them in a way that it's meaningful to the organization, not meaningful to the individual team. So if Jamie's team's looking at my metrics, we should be able to understand what's going on. If I'm looking at her metrics, we should be able to understand what's going on. And that's really that collaboration between our teams and making sure that the organization is focused in the right direction.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just add to that. There's no surprises, right? So, I think this kind of goes to the don't have an adversarial approach to security, but, be collaborative. There's never a time where I jump out and I surprise Steve with a bunch of metrics and say, oh, this isn't happening or that's not happening. It goes back to that communication and making sure that we're always both on the same page before metrics go to the board, before metrics go to any of our risk committees or other committees, so that we both are aware of, hey, maybe we're not doing so great in this area or we're doing really great in this one. But certainly my policy is no surprises, don't surprise anybody, and don't throw anybody under the bus at the last minute. Let's talk about these things prior to, and if there's something we got to deal with, we got to deal with it, but we do it together instead of just kind of chucking things out there.
Do you guys fight for budget? This is your budget, my budget,
Luckily, no, we haven't had to fight, which is good. No, we're no, we've continued to keep the security budget separate from the technology budget, and that's worked out very well for our organization. And I think the organization knows that security costs are much different than technology costs, right? If you want performance, you got to go over here. If you want if you want a different user experience for SSO, you got to go over here. So no, luckily we haven't had to fight.
No, because that was the other thing that people, and it's my personal experience as well, right? It's always comes down to whose budget it's gonna come out from. But I'm glad that you guys have a really good relation from that perspective, but a clear partition of who goes where and who does what from that perspective.
Well, I think, Lakesh, just to kind of add to that, I think part of it is, the reporting structure, to be honest with you. A lot of times, when I was a regulator a number of years ago, when I would see CISOs or CISOs that were tucked up under the CIO, a lot of times their budget relied on the IT budget, right? And IT priorities tended to come first. And so that is why we're kind of split here, so that we don't have those types of competitions. And especially, the FFIEC, which is who we're regulated by, has some very strict rules on these kind of reporting structures, but I absolutely see the benefit for it, and why it's there is really to protect that security budget a little bit and make sure that it doesn't get overrun by other business priorities, which always happens, right? Security always gets a little bit pushed down when it comes to, oh, we need to get better performance on our applications, or we need, whatever it is. Those business priorities tend to always outweigh the security priorities, because security is not a revenue generating area typically,
nor is
especially
IT.
on the internal.
Nor is IT, right? We used to
true.
call IT is the biggest expense, and IT and security is the biggest expense for an organization to the business, right? And that brings me to the next, which is a very, I would say, the hot topic with the where the economy is going, right? Everybody's budgets are tightening up, right? And I've seen that again firsthand, you guys. But I would like everybody else to know from your perspective is what steps do you guys have taken to keep your existing talent pool, right? Do you work together as a team, or you guys work independently? And just a limelight of how are you guys keeping your real talent that you guys have? And I can assure and I can tell everybody that I know that we've seen your teams, and you guys have some exceptional talent on this planet. So how are you guys keeping in this tight budget that talent intact?
Yeah, we focus very heavily on employee retention. So as an organization, not just in our IT and security teams, it's a executive level topic every time we get together. We have an organizational focus on maintaining talent, growing talent, and bringing in talent. Really, it's the core of our organization. Without that, without the talent, without the folks to support and do the mission, we wouldn't be where we are today. So COCC is a great employer, as you touched on earlier. We do a lot of things for our employees, and all of that is built around employee retention, employee satisfaction, making sure that our survey scores are really great, which thankfully we've been awarded, great places to work, best workplaces for the last, as you mentioned, near decade. So yeah, it's a heavy focus. It has been challenging. The turnover rate we've seen has been fairly low for our industry. We continue to stay on the extremely low end of that turnover rate. So we're very happy with that. And we're continuing to come up with new and different ways to try to maintain our employee base.
So it starts with top
So
down, right? Having the cultural from the top down, and we have seen that from that perspective. But Jamie, what's your thought on that?
yeah, so I was just going to say, along the lines of what Steve said. So he mentioned our top workplace award, but as part of that, we participate in a few areas, whether top workplaces or great places to work in Connecticut. And I think out of that really gives us as leaders great places to focus when it comes to employee retention. So through those, we perform surveys to the entire organization, which asks a series of questions, everything from benefits to manager communication, to how do you like your working environment. It's a myriad of questions, but the data that we get back from that really is extremely insightful to say, we've got some employees that are struggling with certain things, or we've got employees that, have been looking for a job in the last 12 months. And of course, we don't have the data to see exactly, and we don't want to do that either, but it allows us to kind of revector our priorities from that executive team, as Steve said. So, if we're seeing an increase in people saying, yeah, maybe our benefits aren't the great, our HR department's absolutely fantastic to take that information back and say, okay, where can we make some adjustments? Where can we do things differently? So as Steve said, from the top down, it's really informative to get that information from your employees. So I would encourage anyone who's listening, if you're not doing surveys in your employee base, I would suggest that you start doing that, because it gets you such a wealth of information on where you need to focus your priorities for retention.
Perfect. And do you guys collaborate with each other? Like, is there a because what I've seen, right? But Steve, I get that it's come from the top to the bottom from that perspective, and we have witnessed that firsthand from multiple perspectives, the kind of the talent you guys have, and we I don't know, Steve, you remember we were working on a very critical thing together, and one of our key engineer, right, architect, you said he has to go on a 2 weeks vacation. It's a year end, and half of the team, you guys forced them to take a vacation because that was the company policy, and we are working on a very critical deadline from that perspective. But the priority was that I need to give my employees rest, right? This was very close to. I learned a lot at that point from you guys saying, yeah, you know what, they care about their people, and that's the culture that we are trying to bring into Apexa IQ as well. I hope people who are listening, how important is to to not just hire a good talent, but to retain a good talent. And in this environment, you guys are doing with technology. You guys are doing with giving visibility from top level to the bottom level. And as Jamie said, we are actually talking to those people, getting their ideas, and that's a really good thing. That's a cultural from that comes from top to bottom, and I really salute you guys for that, for sure. It brings me to the next one, right? And COVID happened, and everybody went remote, right? From that perspective, right? And in today's environment, what is your what you guys think, right, from the technology team perspective, right? Do you think technology teams can effectively contribute, right, in a remote capacity? We have seen several technology companies recently, as Google, Apple, and Microsoft. They require their employees to come back to the office, right? So this is kind of the hot topic out there. I want to know. I have you guys here. I want to know what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, remote work is part of our DNA. It's been part of our DNA at COCC for a long time. So when COVID happened, we sort of just flipped a switch and went from a hybrid schedule to a fully remote schedule. So we've continued to allow folks to remain in that hybrid schedule, and we think it's going to be around for quite a bit. But we do believe in the culture that exists in the office as well too. So we believe that there's something special that makes us COCC and who we are, and some of that comes from the interactions that folks have in the office. So we like to strike a balance there, but we try to be as flexible as possible and as understanding as possible with each employee in each situation. We know everyone is different. And again, it goes back to that retention and employee satisfaction. So how do we maintain the culture of who we feel we are at COCC while still building and growing those bonds between the employees and the organization as well?
Yeah, I think that's the key, right? Flexibility. I mean, every IT team, security team works off hours, works weekends, works, whenever. And, I think when you introduce that flexibility, you allow them to have a little bit more work-life balance. Employee burnout is real. It's absolutely real. And so, as Steve mentioned, the flexibility of allowing employees to say, you know what, I worked from midnight until 6 a.m. last night. I'm going to be a few hours, late into work. Okay. Having that flexibility for these teams especially is really key. Um, but as Steve said, since we've come back to the office after COVID, um, I can say that, one thing that we miss while we're remote is that face-to-face interaction, collaboration, just getting to know the other person that's sitting next to you. When you're working at home, you don't say to yourself, "Oh, I'm just going to schedule a WebEx to get to know, John." You just don't do it. But since coming back in the office, it's been really great. We try to have some core days for folks, and we've instituted some fun happy hours and free lunches and all those good things.
Bring
But
the kids to the office. We saw those things,
yes,
and ice cream nights,
yes.
and we saw those.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
yes. We have so many things going on. But it's absolutely key, like Steve said, to that retainability, the flexibility. Um, you know, w- you could just drive your employees into the ground by not allowing that flexibility when it comes to IT and security, just because of how dynamic their jobs are.
yep. And any advice that you guys have, and you will give out to the other IT and security teams, and who are, I would say, struggling is the right word, to work together effectively, right? As I said, the main goal about having Apexa or big four pillars, our goal was to bring IT, security, finance, and business together, right? And we have seen with you guys, right? Any advice that you guys have, people who are IT and security teams who are struggling to work together, what would you like to give a message?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it would go back to, some of the statements that I said earlier, which is, you need to get to know your CTO or your CIO or both of them, depending on your organization. Really, really build that relationship with them and let them know that you're there to be a business partner with them and not to be, this adversarial person, from security that says, no, you can't do that.
You
Because
can
that's,
say pain in the ass, right? I'm sorry.
security is notorious for always saying no.
Yeah.
But to me, the question should be not no, but let's talk about how do we get there. And let's have the conversation and make sure that you're just always having that back and forth dialogue, whether it's with IT or the business or any other area, about why are we doing this? What's the risk if we don't do this? Because when it comes down to it, it's really about meeting your end business goals and objectives as an organization. Without the rest of the organization, security just, it's not going to work. So,
Yeah. Steve,
Yeah, I think
your
explaining
opinion?
the why was going to be important for folks. So understanding, as Jamie said, why we're doing things the way that we are, whether it's on the security side or on the infrastructure side. We do a lot of things that are unique on infrastructure side that sometimes the security team just doesn't understand or doesn't have the same focus that we would. So explaining our methodologies, why we do what we do and how we do what we do helps them become better at their job as well. So it's a two-way street. You really have to share information back and forth across the aisle to be able to really accomplish both missions at the same time. You can't have a focus on one or the other without bringing them together. You won't be successful today. There's not a separation like there used to be. We've talked about a couple times. IT and security need to coexist. And if they still have that methodology of monolithic towers of security and monolithic towers of infrastructure, you're going to end up having them fall. It's just, they're too interconnected today, and you can't have that.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And I guess and that leads us to me asking the audience, hey, if you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat. We're getting a really good and funny questions for you both as well. But please put them in the chat. We'll get to these questions in a few minutes. You know, I asked these questions, to almost everybody I talked to. You guys were one of our Apexa's first customer, right? You guys gave us a chance in an early stage. Both of you, two-letter question: why Apexa, right? Just before we get to the audience questions from that perspective. So, Jamie, I'll start with you. Why Apexa?
Well, I wanted to know every device that was end of life. Very simple.
Oh, that's good. Good to know. Steve, I remember Steve said, "Hey, if you can give me 50% or 60%, what's the number?" We actually put it in the contract at that time,
Yeah.
and you guys didn't believe that we could do what we could do. But Steve, why Apexa?
Yeah, I think the type of partner that we look for is exactly what Apexa is. So someone that is willing to work with us, willing to listen, take feedback, just understand that the goal at the end of the day needs to be the same for the organizations. Our missions have to align, our methodologies have to align, and we're really looking for a partner and someone to move forward with, not just a single transaction to bring in some random software to help us for a point problem. We have a longer term relationship view. We have a view of a much broader perspective with both the organizations that exist as part of our cooperative and then the different business units inside of COCC. So between all of that, we just need to make sure that the partners that we search out share the same methodologies and share the same ethos that we do. And it's really something that you've built there at Apexa. You really have something that is special there. I know you talked about some of our folks, but we've experienced the team over at Apexa as well, and they're a great bunch of folks and very dedicated, and they really love what they do, and they've been nothing but the best partner that we have to work with. So we really appreciate what you've built over there as well too, Lokesh.
Nope. Steve and
Absolutely.
Jamie, thank you very much. We'll get to the audience questions in a minute. And I guess the first question is I'm looking at the right now. It says, Jamie and Steve, why you like? It's a question to both of you. Were you guys always willing to work together, or did you have to work towards a common ground? So here you go.
That's a funny
Jamie's
question.
really a nice person. Yeah, she's really great.
Well, he says that, but I'm always in his office bugging him. No, honestly, when I first joined COCC, Steve and I weren't working as closely together, and I realized that if I want to be successful, I need to combine efforts with Steve. And the more I got to know Steve over time, the more I realized how much of a vested interest he has just in our shared common goal of protecting our customers and contributing where he can in every area, even when it's the security area. He's always there to help and provide input. And so, I saw Steve as a just a valued ally in COCC to help us both do better in what we do for the organization. And Steve's pretty easy to get along with. There are times where Steve says, "You want to do what? Come on." But
Well, he
no,
has said
Steve's
that to
great to
us all
work
the
with.
time as well. But yeah, I totally get it, right? It's you have to work, right? And it's if you work together, you know what I we teach that in our organization as well. First, thank you very much for Steve and Jamie, giving why Apexa from that perspective. But yeah, we feed that into our organization as well, right? We need to work together, hand in hand. I mean, together, right? If we do that to the common ground, we don't work for, we work with,
Mhm.
right? That's the difference we have, that nobody works for, everybody works with. So once you have that culture, but we have seen that that's why we are very culturally aligned organization from that perspective. And there is a other question that they have, like they're talking about glue, right? And there's question is what kind of a talent or employee roles act as a glue between IT and security. Whoever wants to take that.
Yeah, I think most of our technology folks today understand that there needs to be a security focus in order to get us through. As a financial services organization, we have to have that focus. So the the glue really is our shared goal and our shared methodology of securing our data, securing our customers' data, and making sure that the organization is as safe as possible. Really, we drive at the same goals. That's the key. You can't have two competing priorities. You have to view them as, branches of the same tree. You just can't have them growing in completely different directions. You have to be aligned.
Yeah. So the one thing that I see very specifically is the one thing that these two teams do not have is a person that says, "This is not my job," right? So if we have a very technical engineer that knows how to script something for the security team, they're going to spend time and they're going to do it. If the security team sees something that can help the infrastructure team, they're going to do it, even if it's not part of their job description. And I think that's, going back to what Steve was saying about the collaboration and the teamwork for the same common goal, is people constantly are stepping outside of their lanes, stepping outside of, their dedicated jobs to say, "Hey, I know how to write a script that can help you, do this or that." And so we rely on each other in those certain aspects for, people to stretch themselves beyond their comfort zone and help each other in those ways.
Wow, that's amazing. And the next question is, how do you quantify to your board on the collaborative efforts of your teams?
Mm. Yeah, so I'll take that one. So I think a lot of it comes down to communication about how things are achieved, right? So I'll go back to the the vulnerability piece that I spoke about earlier. When I take those metrics to our board and I present, "Hey, here's how well we're doing," there also needs to be a communication about the effort that was behind that. Because it's very easy to present those types of metrics to a board and them say, "Oh, the security team is doing fantastic," and completely overlook all of the effort that was input by the infrastructure teams. And so I think whoever's going up and presenting those metrics to the board, I think it's important that they provide the whole picture about the effort that it's taken to get to where a certain program is, whether it's the security program or the IT program or whatever. There needs to be that discussion of, it wasn't just we put these things in place and they miraculously happened. Here's the different steps that we took and by whom. So I know for me, that's one thing that I take very personally when I present my security metrics to the board, is that discussion of all of the business teams that helped to get us to a certain point, or all the infrastructure teams that helped to get us to a certain point, and the level of effort that it took to do so.
And that is the key, right? And I remember, I talk about all the time. I managed IT at one of the largest banking organization, and first time I went there, I did the whole analysis, and I went there and I say I need $100 million, to fix our $1 billion of technical debt, and they were like, we're going to give you 5 million. I had no metrics. I went there with the spreadsheets, right? And it sounds very funny right now, but I was very serious. I'm gonna fix this problem that we have, but there was no metrics that I had. We came with the static data that we have, hence Apexa IQ got started from that perspective. But it's metrics to the board, having them, give them complete visibility, working together is a key thing, right? And thanks for letting people know how you guys are doing it. By the way, there's a follow-up questions. There's a questions flowing up now. There's a follow-up question with a chat about working together. The first question that we asked, where we were like, do you have to work? And Jamie, you mentioned earlier that there had been times when Steve asked, do you want to do that? Can you tell us about one of those times?
Yeah, I'm sure I can come up with one. Yeah, so I am a big fan of these PIV cards, right? I love using them. I use them for the military. It's very simple. I just walk in, I put in my card, put in my PIN, and I'm authenticated to everything. It's wonderful. And I remember I brought that up to Steve, and Steve goes, do you want to do that? Really? Do you know what's involved in putting that together? And I said, okay, all right, I'll back off.
Oh, we did put it at my last organization, just so that you know, right? We put that extension, the USB on every desk. You have to come in, put the card in. We did end up implementing that. Steve, any comment on you? Why did you back off? Back off on that one? Because I can tell you, we didn't back off at my last organization.
Yeah, it was really focused on what is the outcome that we're searching for. So, what are we trying to do, and is this the best method to get there? That was more of the discussion rather than
Yeah.
focusing on why that particular choice of technology could be or right or wrong. It was, let's just take a step back and we'll talk through what the end goal needs to be, and then we'll figure out the best path together to get there. So that's more of how our discussions
Yeah.
go. It's not necessarily stomping on an individual piece of technology or an individual choice. It's more, let's just figure out where we need to go, and then we'll grab the smart people in the room, all of our technicians, all of our wonderful folks that work with us, and let them be as creative as they can be to figure out the right path forward. So we have some great folks that work with us and for us, and it's just, that's what they do. That's what they love to do. So let's let them figure out the right path.
Yeah, to Steve's point, he's very great at level setting me sometimes, because I get so excited and I say, wow, look at this cool technology. We should do this. And Steve goes, well, what are we trying to achieve here? And he kind of pulls me back into reality a little bit.
Did
So
you guys have
he's
that
good at those
conversation
discussions.
when you guys picked up XIQ? Just
Yeah, actually, we were both on board. It was one of those
Yeah.
easier decisions where we both saw it as a great software solution for a challenge that we were trying to overcome. So it was really the
hmm
easy choice for us. We didn't have a lot of discussion.
perfect. There's a follow-up question on the board that we had. Have you ever had a tough message that you both had to communicate to the board together?
Luckily, not yet. No, no. I mean, of course, there are some bumps in the road that happen from time to time, but our board is very understanding about some of those things. Obviously, we need to explain it and show why we have some of those bumps. But our board is great at understanding that technology isn't static, right? You're going to have things happen. You're going to have little bumps and blips in the road. And it's really how do you, when you have those bumps and blips, how do you address it and how do you recover from it, no matter what they are. So luckily, knock on wood, hopefully nobody jinxes us. We haven't had to deliver any sort of message like that.
Perfect. And I'm keeping some of the Apexa IQ related because this is not about that. We'll do that some other time. People want to know how you're using it and all and all. We'll do that separately, and I'll let my audience know that we do that. We'll answer those questions. We'll get back to you for these questions. There's a one question that kind of interests me as well when you guys were talking about the vulnerabilities, right? What are the best practices you follow to remediate vulnerabilities quickly?
Interesting. So as I mentioned, we have certain SLAs that are put in place that are well communicated. Every individual can take a look at what they are, how old they are, and where they're scoring. So they're really focused on that score as well as 0 days that come up. Of course, our infrastructure teams are really great at all hands on deck in addressing those situations. But Steve and his teams have come up with a great methodology to patch quickly. And so they've done a really great job in meeting that need. And it really comes back to Steve's teams and how they're managing all those patches on all of those systems in a fast cadence. So Steve, I don't know if you want to talk about any of that a little bit.
Yeah, you have to build it into your infrastructure design and architecture. You have to have things like resilient applications. You have to have things like resilient hardware. You have to be able to understand what your maintenance windows are. But really, the differentiator that Jamie brought on board when she came in was just an organization to the practice. So we had a lot of really great practices, but we didn't have as well developed a formal procedure around them. We were very good at executing things, but when Jamie came in, that she brought that formalization and that process around making sure that everything is reported properly, everything is organized properly, and really bringing that next level to us. So it's been quite an improvement. But from our side, the biggest thing that allows us to get the patches out there as quickly as possible, really, I would have to say, is we have an escalation procedure that we follow when we get these big 0-day vulnerabilities. And if you're scrambling around trying to develop your process when those things happen, you're just going to be very, very slow at implementing them. So we're not trying to build a new road as we're going along. We have a road that we know that we're going to go down. We know exactly what the procedure looks like, and we execute it when we run into those.
There's a follow-up question. That was a perfect answer, by the way, both of you. And there's a follow-up on that. What are your thoughts on automated remediation workflow? And this is coming because Apexa just introduced, and this is coming from a lot of organization. Hey, you guys have an automated workflow that where you can tell, Tenable, Rapid7, or Qualys to do certain things, or you can tell the platforms to do an automated workflow to do certain things, which with the human factor built into the platform where we can say, okay, go open up a change control in your change management system, follow the change management process, right? And then go tell your patch management and go do the patching, right? And then basically start the remediation phase or in that whole automated is about letting people know that this was done successfully or not successfully. If it was done unsuccessfully, restart the process again with the devices that were left behind, right? So that's kind of what we have introduced. And there's a follow-up questions on what are your thoughts on automated remediation workflows like that, right? Because there is a 50-50 that I have seen. I've been talking to a lot of CEOs, CTOs, CIOs, and security administrators and other people, and they are kind of stuck in the middle of should we do an automated remediation yet, not. But if you have a kind of a intermediary talking about that with the human sitting at the button, but what is your thoughts on these automated remediation workflows that can be done automatically? Either one,
Want to
Steve.
go, Jamie, or you?
It doesn't
I
matter.
know it's a tough question from that perspective. There's, just your thoughts. It's fine. As you know,
Yeah, I'll be honest. I mean, I think for me, the jury's kind of out. I can see how successful we are today with all of our automated patching that we're doing. That it's just minimal what's left over. However, some of those minimal things, yeah, I could see the value of doing that automation. We've started doing some of that in some of our other security areas, not necessarily for vulnerabilities, but for other things in our SOC. We have started some of that automation through our change management platform. I think the evolution, we'll kind of see where it goes with the volume of vulnerabilities that are coming out. I definitely, I do see a value for it. I think it's just finding the right time in your organization to say, I need this. And I think everyone's going to be different on that.
Steve, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a place for it. I think that it's got a lot of opportunity to get the bulk of the systems in your environment. But again, you need to know your environment. You need to know your systems so that you're not patching critical systems that have potential to cause impact to the business during that time frame. So if you have a single system running a single application that runs 90% of your business, you probably don't want to take an automated patch workflow to take that system down. But if you have a system that's running on a virtual environment and you could vMotion the system over, you can provide resiliency, it doesn't cause you impact, then yeah, sure, why not? Anything you can do to automate these more tedious, more repetitive processes, the more secure, the more efficient you can be with your technology. So yeah, I'm all for automation as a whole. I think you just need to do some work and do some analysis on where that lives.
And last question I have is about your military background, Jamie. Do you want to say something? First thing, thank you
well,
very
well,
much.
well, I'm not alone. Thank you. I'm not alone. Steve here is military as well. Steve is in the
Oh,
Army. And I'm still currently in the Air Force. I'm a reservist in the Air Force. So I've got about a year and a half left and I can retire. Super excited. So, honestly, it's kind of an aside note, but I think that's another reason why Steve and I work so well together, because we're used to the same common mentality of, okay, we have a problem. How do we solve it? And how do we move forward? Instead of just kind of, mulling over things. And, so we both kind of tend to have this military aspect of, we may be in the trenches right now, but we're just going to keep going. So.
salute, my friend. And looks like these are all the questions we have today. I think we are on time. There are some questions about how you guys are using a platform, and we'll cover that in some other. We'll send you that, and we'll cover that on the side. But looks like we have all the questions for today, and we hope you found this session valuable. Thanks to Jamie and Steve for their expertise and for sharing their thoughts and aligning these priorities of cyber risk and the service delivery for security and IT teams. And thank you very, very much. I really appreciate spending time with me, Jamie and Steve. And thanks again. Appreciate it.
So thank you.
Lokesh.
Thank you very much, Lokesh. You've been a wonderful business partner to COCC, and so has Apexa. And as Steve said, we absolutely enjoy having you in our COCC family, and enjoy having both of our teams work together. So it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you very much for having us both.
Thank you.